Where did that go? That second half cooked. Welcome to the PWI Live Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frankar. When we're supposed to be talking to you, which is after Penn State football, they rolled West Virginia 34-12 in the season opener in Morgantown. An upset alert game until it very much wasn't from beginning to end. Nittany Lions got off to a bit of a maybe overhyped start where they were a little bit... I don't want to say anxious, I don't want to say nervous. Hyped is the right word. They seemed like they were ready to play that football game, but apparently it only meant something to the home team. And I'm not trying to sit here and disparage any fans. West Virginia fans probably not feeling great right now. But I always find the conversation of who wants it more to be a little bit overblown. Penn State obviously wanted to win that game. Penn State has aspirations of college football playoff. I don't know if you noticed it. It's the only thing they talked about in that game. They came ready to play from the first whistle to the final snap. And in the second half, they exerted their dominance over West Virginia. There's not a whole lot of X's and O's analysis. They were just outright better. Nick Singleton's touchdown run was textbook run blocking in the particular scheme it was in. Two things about that to start. The 40-yard touchdown, it's the exact play that they used in Auburn 2022, just a standard counterplay. Well, it's not the exact play. They pulled two different players as opposed to a tight end and a guard. They pulled the tackle and the guard from the backside. You don't need to know that. What you need to know is that they pulled players and were using pulling linemen in this game. Last year, they didn't really do that very well. This game, they did it very well. And when it comes to that, that's it. That's the analysis. They had better run blocking. They had some great playing up front, and they were able to wear down West Virginia, who is not as deep nor as talented. And so Penn State won 34-12 in a game that felt like that was actually not even as close as it was. Credit to West Virginia. They fought through, but I think not having Wyatt Milam in the second half, he was not out there. Changed a lot of things for them and what they could do or what they felt comfortable doing. They weren't throwing the ball down the field to begin with. And then it got even more curtailed in the second half, and you saw what happened when Smith Vilbert hit the Aaron Donald. That was Aaron Donald's signature pass rushing move. Makes sense. 290-pound defensive end makes that move, gets a strip sack, and then Denai Denison picks it up for the turnover and the icing on the cake in this game. And Bruno says, this team looked pretty good, but last year against this team, they also looked good, T. Frank. How do you compare the two openings? Night and day. Penn State was able to throw the ball, and they were able to run the ball. And they had a complete offensive performance, even in the second half where they didn't need Drew Aller. He went 11-17. I got to pull up the splits here between the first and second half, because I find these to be interesting. This is your halftime adjustments, right? So Drew Aller in the first half was 8 of 13 for 199 yards and 3 touchdowns because he threw all the passes. Then in the second half, let's see. Got to find that. In the second half, Penn State threw the ball 5 times. So they went 4 of 5 for 36 yards and a touchdown because they had 173 yards rushing in the second half, 28 rushing attempts for 173 yards. That's a complete and total domination because they weren't even throwing the football. They were just executing their run plan from the standard running alignment. They weren't using Bo Pribula to get those yards. They weren't using their option football. It was just line up and let Nick Singleton run. So that outside zone stretch system, he's a better runner this year. His vision is better. His decision-making is better. His ability to find the holes and be decisive is all better. And the run blocking is better. There's a lot of things that seem to have improved in the front seven. Vega Ioane had an excellent game. I'm excited to share that stuff with you on my film analysis that comes up tomorrow and Monday, showing some of those improvements up front. Anthony Donko was really strong in the run game. I thought the offensive line is very good. And I didn't know that West Virginia's, we said this in the tailgate show, they're a veteran group, but they struggled to live up to their size and play style last year. And it was very much the same case this year, where they did not necessarily have a very good game up front for West Virginia. And then once you get into the secondary, they're smaller guys. And you saw Nick Singleton hit the turbo. He got into the open field. He got to that second level. And then he did that Saquon Barkley thing where any normal human being would have been caught for 17 yards. And by normal human being, I mean normal football player, which is still exceptionally talented. But Nick Singleton is just that extra percent faster where he's running away from guys who are standing next to him that should have made the play. So overall, this is an excellent first complete performance from the offensive line, from the receivers, from the running backs. You even got Tyler Warren involved with that touchdown late in the Bo Prabula package. So I think it was a very good game. I have no notes. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I'm not going to say they were playing simple, but there was no reason to play anything other than cover 3 and cover 1. What that does, you load the safeties into the box, you add an extra hat in the run game, and you flood underneath zones and coverage. And if you have an opponent that you feel like, they're not going to throw the ball deep on us, then that's what you get. But conversely, that's why they gave up some of those big plays, because they were aggressively playing the run. They're playing in the box, trying to attack and corral the run game, the option game, and the short passing game. And they did that. But Garrett Green is not a terrible quarterback. I know 54% completion percentage isn't good. He had to throw the ball away a lot. He also was throwing under pressure, and the way they throw the football when they're not throwing it short, they are attacking downfield, similar to Andy Kotelnicki and his offense. So I don't think he had a bad game. I just think that he wasn't as good as Drew Aller, because this is the point. When you unlock the best of Drew Aller, this is a really good football team. He was poised. Drew Aller was confident. I would say even cocky. Did we all catch at the sideline on that scramble where he they punted? It was a fourth down play where he runs through the pocket and it's like 7 seconds of pure agony watching him. He's not a pretty runner. Let's be fair. He's not a pretty runner. He is effective. And then, the guy who hit him, he gets up and he's jawing with that guy. I even think the beginning of the game where he's getting after the ref because the safety was clapping in the secondary, trying to get the attention of one of his teammates, and it simulated the snap. I thought Drew Aller was aggressive, confident, assertive, everything you wanted him to be. He was that in this game. I have cat hair on my face. I apologize. I'm trying not to touch my face. This is the BWI Live Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, as you can see here on the screen. Welcome. Hope you enjoyed that extended Penn State football experience on a Saturday. We started this at noon. We all put in a full work day, and here we are at 6 o'clock. I have been on camera now for almost 3 hours by the end of this show. So I hope you're not sick of me, and I love that you're all here. Thank you for joining us. Stephen Light says, we are happy. Appreciate you being here, Stephen. Again, Stephen's been with us since the pregame show, so he's been around. Love this. Jason says, what a marathon. Good day at the office for our boys. Yes, very literally. He says, thank you to everyone at the message board over at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Always got to throw this out here. I don't want to speak out of turn, but keep your eyes on social media. Penn State just won a big game, so I don't want to give you the wrong information, but there's an opportunity we might not have another sale coming up. So just keep your eyes peeled. But if you want to join us right now, I don't want to dissuade you from doing that. I'll give you the deal that's always there, and that is our $1 deal to join bluewhiteillustrated.com. It's $1 for 2 months of access to the site. And the promo code is PSU1. I will let you know, because now I'm here. I'm in the cockpit. I can't necessarily go call anybody, be like, hey, what are we doing? Just keep your eyes peeled for that, because that might happen at some point. But we're all scrambling. Also, speaking of my coworkers, excellent job from Nate Bauer, Ryan Snyder, Greg Pickle, and Sean Fitz. Fitz, Pickle, and Nate are all at the game, so they're going to be bringing you their instant analysis after the game. Also, James Franklin's press conference, key interviews from players as well. So all of that coming up here on the YouTube channel. We're going to talk about the game, and then they're going to talk about the game, and then James Franklin's going to talk about the game. So you're going to have a full night of Penn State football talk, because there's nothing like the kind of high that comes from a win, right? Everyone's feeling really good. So let's get into it a little bit, get some of your thoughts. Very happy with the performance, but the offsides calls were a tad irritating. Yeah, they were amped up, weren't they? They were ready to go in the second half. Abdul Carter got a little loose and wild. He got a little aggressive. And that was, again, that was a halftime adjustment from West Virginia where they saw how jumpy Penn State was in the first half because they almost jumped offsides a couple of times. In fact, I think Amin Vanover had one early in the game. So they went to a double count. They went on 2. And so it got Penn State. But a lot of West Virginia's success in that game, they created those explosive plays. I'm actually blanking on how those happened because I didn't have 2 hours to break it down in between halftime and now. I had to come here and shoot from the hip, but it was a very impressive performance from the defense. I thought, again, they simplified the game plan in the second half and really just put it to West Virginia. And a shout out to Elliott Washington for an excellent play to end the game, essentially, because they were trying to pick on him. He came into the game, that red zone play where he got a little bit beat, so he's behind the guy. If the ball is on him, it's a touchdown. They went after him again in phase, made a play on the football. That was Elliott's biggest thing as far as his analysis of kind of his play style was. Is he going to make plays on the ball? He is athletic enough to be a starter on this team, but it's always been the instincts and his ability to read the situation and play within the structure and understand football. And they said they could roll even 6 deep at corner, and we saw, I think, all 6 of them on the field today. I know we saw at least 5 of them, so that's really impressive. David says, Drew grew up, T. Frank. He's a different player than last year. Offense has a really high ceiling. Defense looks more of the same. David, I used some more colorful language when texting Landon earlier today. Grew up is the correct way to put that here on the YouTube channel. Drew Aller played with the poise and confidence that you want out of your starting quarterback. This West Virginia team is... I don't know. It's easy to sit here and say 34-12 that they're not good. I don't think that's true. But I do think that there was a clear difference in the talent that was coming back from Penn State and from West Virginia. And West Virginia had a good end of the season. Penn State did not have a good end to their season, given their expectations and the opt-outs in the bowl game. And so you had this narrative all offseason that West Virginia was closing the gap. They're bringing back all these veteran players. But, I mean, we saw Anthony Donko. He took a step. Drew Shelton played well. Where if they had played poorly, that would have been a more interesting game if they're giving up pressures with 3- and 4-man pass rushes. And it was just comfortable sailing for Drew Aller during the entire game. So I do want to put that caveat there, that this was a game that Drew should play well in. But let's give him credit. When they started throwing blitzes at him, I put him up on X. I still want to call it Twitter, by the way. He did a great job of being... They sent I want to say it was either a 6- or 7-man pressure at a play action. So Aubrey Burks is about from you to me away from him, and he used the arm slot to throw around him and almost got a completion to Luke Reynolds. It's the best almost completion I've seen from a quarterback in a while, where that was a really good throw, and he was under pressure, and he stayed calm, and he stayed poised. I even liked his decisions not to throw the football. And it's not just that he scrambled and got out of the pocket and got some yards, because against more athletic competition, teams that are on Penn State's talent level, I apologize to West Virginia. This always sounds disrespectful, but let's just call it what it is. When they play Ohio State, those athletes are going to catch up to Aller. And so he might not get 5 yards on a scramble, but his decision-making to not throw the football into that play where there was a safety lurking over the middle of the field and he almost threw it and he pulled it down was a great decision. And then breaking the pocket and knowing when to run, having the confidence to do those things, it was everything you wanted from Drew Aller. It's what I said on the Tailgate Show. If he's taken that step mentally, it's all between the ears, because everything he is as a mental processor is elite. And he didn't really even have to do it today. He didn't have to do a lot of that getting to the second read. If there's one thing that I would say is a little concerning, you do have 5 catches for 117 yards with Trey Wallace. You got a little bit out of Amari Evans, and then that was it. We didn't see a whole lot go into Liam Clifford. We did not. I don't think we saw Caden Saunders on offense. I think he was out there just to shag punts. I think I don't even know if he had a plan of returning any of them, but he was going to catch them and start where the ball wherever it was. So the receiving core maybe is still TBD, but they got enough from the offense and Andy Kotelnicki to get those first reads open, and for Aller to just. He is such a good quarterback. I understand that some people think he's inaccurate, and he's earned that a little bit, but his throwing motion, the actual mechanics of it, are so pretty. And his mental game when he's clicking and confident. And we saw that. We saw that him get tested at points in this game. It's what we've been waiting to see. What Penn State fans, what you've been hoping to see, and what I've been hoping to watch, so I can talk to you and you won't be mad about it. Brett Sturrer. Brett, I'm sorry I butchered your last name. Sturrer. Brett Steerer. Brett says, my biggest takeaway was that Andy Kotelnicki has complete faith in his scheme and game plan. The Bo Prabula package leading to the touchdown. Brett, you brought up a great point. I did not enjoy the Bo Prabula experience most of the game until it paid off for that red zone touchdown, and then I was like, it's fine. It's fine. I think they've got to decide on a couple of things. And Bo didn't have a good game. Some of his decision making, from how he was running, the fumble, etc., he was involved in the game quite a bit. And that's way more than the 10% I was thinking. I think that was pushing like 30% of the plays. It was a lot to having those two quarterbacks on the field. The one play where he ran in the back of one of his own offensive linemen, he just needed to follow his blocking. I don't know why he tried to cut back on that. I don't know what he saw. I'll have to see from the coach's film at some point, like what did he see? But from my view, he had a massive run if he just follows his blocking, because it was quarterback power, I think, where it's a pretty standard run play where it's designed for the quarterback, and he tried to cut outside of the design scheme, and he ran right into one of his offensive linemen and then into another player. And then he had another read where I think if he had kept the ball instead of giving it to Singleton, he would have had another big run. But how do you fall giving it to Nick Singleton, who then got a first down on the play and did what he was supposed to do? But all of that action, all of those plays, this is what we've talked about all offseason, what I've written about, again, at bluewhiteillustrated.com. If you want to go there and check out that information, you can see all this stuff. And I'll say, here we go. I just wanted to share this with you. Let me pull this up. I knew something like this might happen. 50% off. Bam. Look at that. Big game win. 50% off at bluewhiteillustrated.com. The promo code is WEARE. That's 50% off of annual membership. So we just did this, but because you're here with us, because Penn State got a big win, we want to celebrate with you. Join us at bluewhiteillustrated.com. The promo code is WEARE, 50% off a year's membership to Blue White Illustrated. So you can see the film breakdown, and we can talk about these things together, and I can show you the video at bluewhiteillustrated.com on Monday and tomorrow on the message board. All that stuff coming up so we can talk about these things in detail. Again, promo code is WEARE for 50% off. Don't delay, because that one is that's not happening for the full weekend. So join us right now. And then the Bo Prabula package and getting Tyler Warren open. He was wide open, and I swear I watched that exact play with Mason Fairchild at Kansas I can see it in my sleep, where everyone's washing this way, and then the tight end runs up the seam for a wide open touchdown. Those play actions and those motions and shifts pay off. So Brett, even though I don't know how to say your last name, you make a great point. And then A. Campbell says, Aller had to be the biggest positive surprise today, right? Looking forward to the next few weeks with lower blood pressure. Yeah, I would say that's number one on the list of positive outcomes and things that you should feel really good about with Penn State's performance today was Drew Aller taking that step from a mental perspective. Jay Fizzle says thoughts on the wide receivers. Trey Wallace was great. So I do like the big noon kicks because we get the sky cam and they do a great job. And I think Joe Klatt is very good at instant analysis of the play. And we get those all 22 views. I saw a lot of not open outside of Trey Wallace. The downside of having Drew Aller running, he had to have like 50 yards rushing, 44 yards rushing, is because the cover one and run, the downside is he had to run. And so there were a lot of guys that weren't open, a lot of plastered coverage against a West Virginia secondary. That can be an issue going forward. So they're not out of the woods yet. And that's one thing that I think that is an underlying, I kind of mentioned that a little bit ago, of not a lot of contribution outside of Trey Wallace. They didn't need it in this game because the run game was so good. That outside zone devastated West Virginia in the end. They were able to just... They did that thing that everyone wants where they just wore them down. 42 runs for 222 yards. And 5.3 yards per carry. P. Danny asks, should we be worried about kicking? So James Franklin is aggressive to start the game with a 2-point conversion, and everyone says, James Franklin doesn't understand football, and it's like, maybe he knows his kicker better than you. They go for it on 4th and something or other in the middle, in that kind of gray area between kick a field goal or go for it. I think that is something you should pay attention to. Yes, because there was no kicker named. He said they were... Here's the other thing. Let's just stop right now. When he answered the question, and I think it was Greg Pickle who asked this question, how do you feel about your kicker? Or maybe it wasn't Greg, but anyway, how do you feel about your kicking game? And he said they're all very close. And he said 84, 83, and 81% completion percentage in practice. If you notice, none of those started with a 9 or a high 8. 83 is a little concerning. And I know that's not the NFL, and so you expect kickers to be perfect in the NFL, because what else are you doing with your life? But yeah, I think the kicking game might be a bit of an issue. We'll have to see. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. We had our defensive player of the game for the first half. That was Jalen Reed. So let's get to our defensive player of the game for the second half. Our defensive player of the game for the second half is Tony Rojas. I'll get to that in just a second. I want to talk about Matt McClenahan of McClenahan Law Firm. He's a Penn State alum, Penn State super fan, who is zealously representing his clients for over 2 decades. Very accessible. You can reach him nights and weekends. He and I have been emailing back and forth on this particular feature. Friday night, Sunday afternoon. He is always working. For information, visit mattmlaw.com. He's also, like, no joke, he's a Penn State super fan. We met at an event, and we just had a conversation. He's a fan of Blue White Illustrated. It's always nice when we have these conversations, and I don't have to explain who I am or what we do. Like, oh, yeah, I know you. It's like, that's great, so let's work together. And here he is on the BWI Live postgame show. So he's a super great guy. I'm appreciative of him being here on the show. Let's talk about Tony Rojas and his second half, because, oh, wow, was it really good. KJ Winston finishes the game with 12 tackles, 7 solo, and a forced fumble. So, yes, but I thought there was some up and down even from KJ. Somebody dropped coverage on that should have been a touchdown for West Virginia on the goal line, and it might have been KJ. I have to go back and look, but there was some... That fullback should not be out there by himself. But Rojas finished with the game. He had 1.5 tackles for loss at halftime. He should have 2.5. There was that one play on Garrett Green where Kobe King goes the wrong way. Now, I know he's following the fake. I don't know who's responsible for the fake right now, but there was that same old thing we've been seeing from both teams, that there's a jet sweep, and do you follow the sweep or do you follow the offensive line? And it could have gone really bad for Penn State. First off, Alonzo Ford did a great job on the defensive line, and so did Smith Vilbert. But Tony Rojas filled aggressively and stuck the quarterback. I also think in the second half, when they were playing some soft coverages, he's put in a bit of a disadvantage because he's dropping into the boundary, and there's nothing West Virginia likes more than attacking the short side of the field. Garrett Green's got a good arm, but they love throwing into the short side of the field. They love running into the short side of the field. They want to do everything in a little bitty box. They're one of those people, it feels like they want to swaddle the offense. Like, it needs to be nice and tight. And in those situations, when you're dropping into an obvious coverage, So they weren't doing a lot of rotations. They weren't doing a lot of zone droppers in the second half. They were kind of just playing straight cover 3 or cover 1. And that's when you got to see West Virginia roll a little bit. But I was still impressed because Tony was able to plaster to his man. He got a PBU. Again, he should have a PBU in the stat sheet because he broke up a pass, even though he didn't get his hand on it on that third down. And in those situations where he's got to be the guy that has to sift through the trash and get to his man on the short side of the field, who's a receiver all the way at the sideline, he was still able to stop those plays for minimal gains. Out in the open field, that tackling, you saw the 240 pounds of Tony Rojas come into play where he grabbed a guy and the guy fell over. So that was excellent job from Tony Rojas, the sophomore linebacker. He was a little bit jumpy to start the game. He was a little too bouncing back and forth, a little too athletic at times. He settled in and was excellent there in the second half. I honestly think that rain delay maybe helped Penn State a little bit, calm some guys down, let them chill out, and then they came in and were a really impressive group in the second half on offense, and then some of the defensive players. Somebody brings up Julian Fleming. Yeah. Again, you got to join Blue White Illustrated. We've been talking about this. Fleming was a non-factor. Julian Fleming is a good football player. He's going to come into play. He's going to be a part of this team, and he's going to make catches. But if you're just joining us for the first time, and I see that we have almost 700 people here on the live show, so hello. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you being here, and I'm just going to throw this up here again. If you want to get this information on a regular basis, Nate Bauer has been talking about this all offseason. We've been discussing Julian Fleming's role on this team. Promo code WEARE for 50% off the best Penn State football coverage. You would have come into this game and known all this information. Julian is going to be, first off, he was a good run blocker. He did a good job on a couple of plays getting out there. And I know when you start with run blocking, it's almost like talking about a guy's, like, he's a great guy. You know, like, oh, he's such a sweet guy. If your dating profile is like, I'm a lot of fun, and you take all your angles from your photos from this angle, we know what that's about, right? When you start with a receiver on run blocking, there are some things that are missing. He's going to be a veteran receiver that catches the football when it's thrown to him. But if you're expecting him to get open against man coverage or generate the explosive plays in this offense, you should have been with us this whole offseason. Promo code WEARE. We could have told you about it. He's not the slowest player in the world. He is not useless. He's like, we can't, it's not one or the other. It's not, he's terrible. It's just that, he's going to have a role against teams that play more specific zone coverages. And in the second half, West Virginia played, they went, I wondered what it was going to be that was going to come in that we weren't expecting. And they played a little more man coverage than I expected. So not his game. And again, like I said, bit of an issue with some of those guys getting open. That's one of those things. Jacob Wetzel says, hi. Hello. Larry is pro. He's back for another season. West Virginia should have only had 3 points. I watched Kansas football. We had more explosive plays in one game than we had all year. There's still more to come, and they're not even at their peak yet, he says. Yeah. Again, Larry has a really good point. If you watch Kansas football from last year, they were per capita way more explosive than Penn State. They ran, I think, 100 less plays and had more explosive passing plays and more explosive run plays than Penn State, who just won through absolute attrition last year. Look at this. So the drive chart. I followed this last year, and I want to share this with you because it's very different than what it was from a year ago. And this is a good thing. This is a really good thing. So I'll put this all the way up so you can see in a little detail. Hopefully you've got a gigantic TV and this all looks good. Okay, so Penn State, 4 plays and then a fumble. 3 and out, that's not good. A 4-play touchdown drive. A 10-play touchdown drive. They would have had to go 13 plays to get a field goal here last year, and then another 10, maybe 17 to get a touchdown here. 3-play touchdown drive, 9-play touchdown drive, 6-play. Can you see how it's different? And then you look over here, the attrition that they had to play with on the West Virginia side, 10 plays for points, 13 plays, and you turn it over on downs because you don't feel like you're getting back here. 7-minute drive, a 13-play drive, a 10-play drive for 70 yards and a touchdown. Now, that one, they got a bunch of explosive plays, so they did both. Also, they got a phantom touchdown because that wasn't a touchdown. How is it that you and I have better replay technology than the Big Ten? We all saw that wasn't a touchdown. Live, I said that's not a touchdown. But apparently the only person who saw a touchdown was the line judge. I don't know. It's not important because they won the game from the Penn State perspective, but it is important. If that happens again, that's not good. You want to have these things as accurate as possible. So, yeah, that wasn't great. I thought the refs were not great in this particular game. Daniel says they stacked the box, daring Aller to throw. Running backs had a stacked box. So in the second half, I don't know that that's true. And I genuinely mean I don't know. Because I have to see where the safeties were aligned on that big touchdown run. But Tyler Warren got to the safety to block him so that Singleton could run away from everybody. So that, to me, and I'm trying to do this live, means the other safety was on the wrong hash. So they added it in the run box away from the run, and I'm fairly certain that's how that play went. So they were able to run the ball effectively in the second half. I do think there is a question of how did Aller's passing influence the second half, and were they playing more of that soft too high coverage to allow for some of those big plays? But from what I remember of that, they had another 40-plus yard run that didn't result in a touchdown, but it resulted in points on that play. Singleton just had to cut off the back of his offensive line, who mashed the West Virginia defensive line. Matt Ritchie says, if Singleton doesn't break two big runs, what will we be saying about the O-line in the run game? They were good. Vega Ioane was very good in this game. Anthony Donko is very good in this game. Drew Shelton missed a couple blocks that I've seen. Need to go back and kind of go through everything. He had a good game overall. Again, he pulled and opened up that hole for Singleton to win. And that's the thing. Like, Singleton broke off those runs because the run blocking was good. This was the issue last year, is I felt like their run blocking was pretty good last year, and it just didn't matter. So this year, their run blocking was pretty good, and everything worked. I don't have an answer for you on that one other than Andy Kotelnicki, right? Kevin says, thanks for doing this, T. Frank. I started with him because I haven't read this whole thing. And usually when somebody says thanks, they're not going to say something awful, like even offensive. Offense definitely looked a bit different in a good way. And boy, was it nice to see Singleton finally rip off a big touchdown run. Yeah. Not only the big touchdown run, I want to see again. I'm trying to pull up the comparisons here because these are some really interesting stats we can get into even from without the advanced data, getting the game level stats, because those explosive plays are really impressive. Penn State only had 7 runs that were stuffed, meaning it didn't go for more than 2 yards. That's 17% of their runs. That's really good. From the West Virginia perspective, 24% of their runs were stuffed. But I want to find explosive passing plays, big plays, and yards. Penn State had 15 big plays. And I don't know exactly how they categorize that. It's run is different than pass. They had 15 big plays in this game for 346 yards. That's impressive. That is a really great game. If you consider the fact that I think they only had 457 yards in this game, everything was a big play. Like, every yard they got essentially was a big play. But those big-time runs and those explosives are really impressive in this game and are exactly what Andy Kotelnicki was brought in here to do. And so that is mission accomplished in this first game. Yeah, here we go. Now I've got it. 7 explosive passes for 197 yards. I don't know how many they had last year to end the year, but it wasn't 7. Now, on the flip side, West Virginia had 5 for 111. You'd like it to be a little tighter. If you wanted the whole, domination, 5 plays of 15-plus yards from the West Virginia passing attack. That is their game. We told you that. We previewed that coming into this game, that West Virginia's passing attack was explosive when you give them the opportunity. 5 for 111, but here's the big thing. Penn State only gave up runs of 10-plus yards, 6 for 63. Penn State had 8 runs for 149 yards, and Drew Aller on those was part of that. So you even got, I find it interesting, for as much as they wanted to get Bo the football, of the two, the leading rusher was Drew Aller. He had 6 carries for 44 yards. Now, those are mostly scrambles. They might have been all scrambles, but again, they're really trying to make that Bo package work. That's something they got to get figured out for week 2 against Bowling Green, but really they got to get it figured out for Illinois. Watched Illinois this weekend. Luke Altmaier looked pretty good. I'm excited to dive into that film and see what he is. He looked more decisive when I was watching him. Obviously, it's a non-conference, non-Power 5 opponent, so you should look good, but there's certain ways of looking good where you're progressing, you're reading the defense correctly, you're doing a bunch of things that are really good from a process standpoint. That's when you get excited against non-conference opponents. Farzad says, Penn State's offense looked world better today. Aller looked confident. Offensive line played great. Defense looks elite. It's Penn State's playoff to lose. Oh, man. Just think about the world. Close your eyes and see the world in November, right? It's cold. Currently, all of the trees are green, let alone have their leaves. And Farzad here is talking about after Thanksgiving. Just think about that game. Is it Maryland that's the final game of the year this year? I think it's Maryland. You know, the game for Thanksgiving when all the students are gone. It's senior day. It's probably raining, or it's cold and raining. It's State College, so it's always raining or gray. And we're in that world right now for Farzad. Week 1, great win, 34-12. It's all very encouraging. West Virginia might not be as good as everyone wanted them to be for this game. We're going to find out. They're certainly not bad, but there is an element of the schedule they played last year leading into a game that didn't have Drake May that made a lot of people feel really good about this team. I think we saw the offensive line was not the same without Zach Frazier. They were generally less athletic. So let's see. Duke says 2.5 hour halftime aside, big fan of the BWI halftime show. Going to need that standard for 2024. No pressure. Yeah, if I've got a 2-hour halftime, if we have a Super Bowl halftime plus a Taylor Swift concert in the middle of every game, sure, yeah, I'll do that. Duke, I think you're going to be disappointed by the fact that might be a one and done. I don't know that we all want to sit through rain delays every single week so we can discuss things at halftime. Some coaches might love that, though. Some of the guys I want to talk about that we haven't really hit on yet. Zane Durant was excellent in this game. 4 tackles, tackle and a half for a loss, the 1 sack. Jaquay Hubbard, the right guard, I felt a little bad for him because Zane Durant got, I think, 6 yards of just forklifting him into the quarterback. It was very impressive. Zane Durant is unbelievably strong. He is 290 pounds now. He is a complete defensive tackle from a physique standpoint. The only thing he doesn't have is the same thing I don't have. That's it. Like, if he were 6'3", we would be talking about Zane Durant a lot more. He was a force in the run game, and he was incredibly powerful through contact. I was a little shocked. Not that I ever thought he was weak at any point in his career. He's always played well through contact, even being undersized and being a sophomore or a freshman. But now he's making impact plays through double teams. And remember, Jaquay Hubbard is 330-some pounds. Yates is 330 pounds, and he was controlling the line of scrimmage at 290. So Zane Durant, really good game. A little quiet from the edges. Denied it, and part of that is, and I got to go back and I'm going to look at like how quickly the ball got out of the hands of the quarterback because I think that is part of it. But when you've got Smith Vilbert getting a sack at the end of the game, You've checked all the bingo boxes. You've got bingo because you've gotten just about everybody into the game to make some plays. And they used all of those defensive linemen. I was very impressed with the rotation and the quality of the rotation. So now it's going to be stress testing this in September 28th. Get through the next 2 games healthy, get to the game against Illinois, and then see where we're at. Because again, that's going to be a very different test. Illinois' defensive line is no joke. I know they lost Johnny Newton, but 17 or 19, whoever their defensive end is, he is a big dude, and he's a very strong dude. So they're going to have something for Penn State. I think Penn State can handle it, but I also think that's going to be an interesting game. William Howard says 11 might need to go back to linebacker. I don't think he was bad. I think that defensive end is one of those positions where you can either have all the impact in the world or the quarterback can throw the ball away before you get there. And again, this was the conversation at halftime. I said, I think I'm ready to say Abdul Carter's great. Then in the second half, they played a little simpler, I think, from a coverage perspective, and so the ball got out of Garrett Green's hands a little faster. I wouldn't put that to bed just yet. The only reason I'd say that you want to put 11 back at linebacker is if you want to take Dom DeLuca off the field in those 3 linebacker sets, because then you would have Rojas and Carter. But I kind of like having those guys stacked behind each other because there was a couple plays where that was working, and it was working really well. What else you guys got? You got anything else you want to talk about? Let's see the other players here in the game. Jalen Kimber, I thought had a good game. Ended up starting opposite of A.J. Harris. The corners generally were good. Cam Miller, a little quiet in this game. Davian Collins saw a couple of snaps. Elliott Washington finished the game strong. There's still more to learn there for sure. But I don't know that. I have a hard time knowing how I feel about Jalen Kimber's game because of the pass interference penalty. Gave a big play that I don't know was totally his fault, but he also didn't stop. So there's a certain perspective of, well, it's a black and white game in that sense of you either stop the guy or you didn't. But he didn't have any of those impact plays like A.J. Harris or some of the other guys. I think the other thing is you had a lot of guys involved, and they were able to get a lot of players on the field. Tyler Elsdon played a much bigger role in this game than I was expecting. Kobe King, a little bit quiet in this game. So there's still some more room to grow and some more things to learn. Drew Aller, a total of only 18 passes. I think in this game, Penn State wasn't really challenged in the second half. So do we know the full story there? I don't want to talk myself into a lot of these negative points. I just want to say, like, there are some areas we can learn some more. A. Campbell says, who on the staff is calling Matthew Otten tonight? Yeah, that was a fun performance, right? So this is the point. A. Campbell has a point here. Make the game fun. Make it interesting for people to watch and to play in. And I think that's a really good point. You can say, listen, you can be Trey Wallace in this offense. Maybe you're the next Trey Wallace. Bruno says, do you know what happened to Liam Clifford? So much hype around him before the season. I don't know what happened to him in this particular game, other than they got the ball to Trey Wallace. And then in the second half, they didn't really throw the football. I think that's where I'm really going to land on the analysis of the receivers is it overall was not good enough from a open target perspective. A lot of plays. I don't know that you're comfortable with Drew Aller because he has 17 attempts, but there were 6 more dropbacks where he had to run the football and a couple more where he had to, he had to throw the ball away. So the second half, they didn't do a whole lot. They didn't need to. So we didn't need to see any more from Liam Clifford. So we'll see what happens in the future. I'm curious as to what that's going to look like. The other thing is Katron Allen had a quiet game. Katron Allen, 10 carries. He had more carries than, Nick Singleton had 13. So that was the lead back, I guess, in the game. But as soon as Nick Singleton ripped off a big run, they put Katron in the game and allowed him to go to work. But that wasn't his game for some reason. So 10 carries for 20 yards. Getting him going will be good at some point. But now we're really just nitpicking. We're just running down and nitpicking a whole lot of things. Ken says, need more likes. Appreciate you saying that. Appreciate when people help me out here on the show, because you guys are my post-game show co-host is you. So appreciate you guys. Chuck, I don't know what is the good question. Whether we already talked about the good question or if it was in the chat. Here we go. Why was Elsdon in so much? I think early on, from what our guys on site said, and again, follow bluewhiteillustrated.com, promo code WEARE for 50% off an annual membership. $60 for the whole year. That's a great deal. They were saying it was very hot, like super hot at the beginning of the game. You know what it is. If you're like me and you live in State College, it's one of those swamp days where the thermostat says like, it's like 82 degrees, right? But it's 80% humidity, and you're going to get gassed. So I think early on they were rotating a lot. I also think Kobe wasn't playing particularly well, but I also think Elsdon didn't play particularly well. So they were rotating linebacker like a manic amount early in the game. The substitutions early in the game were intense, which I always wonder. Obviously, you're not sprinting because that's a different level of exertion, right? But if you're running to the sideline every single play, is that really giving you a break? Because it's a 6-second play, so maybe you're getting like 40 seconds and you got to run more. I don't know about you, but like I get sweaty and tired just jogging. And I know I'm not an athlete, but I know that it's 53 yards across the field. So you're running 25 yards every single time. Maybe, I don't know. It always seems like if you're constantly coming off the field, kind of feels like that's also tiring. Kevin does not say anything. A man of very few words. Donates to the channel. Kevin, appreciate you, my guy. If you have a question, I'll toe tap and dance a little bit here on the show to give you some time if you want to have a question or a comment in the chat, because if you donate $50, I'm going to give you the time of day. But to recap some of the things from the first half that I don't want us to lose sight of, Trey Wallace, wide receiver 1, confirmed. His ability to make contested catches. There was the one he didn't catch because the DB got his hand in there, and you're not going to catch every single contested catch. The back shoulder was great. The sideline catches were great. The explosive plays to run down the field and get those chunk yards were all great. So that was all awesome from Trey Wallace. More of that. He can't catch every ball. He can't catch 17 catches for 235 yards and be the only player out there. So, yes, I do think that they needed a little more balance from the receiver group. They didn't need it today. Ryan says, I didn't feel the linebackers played that great. Am I wrong? Overall, I would agree. Tony Rojas had a great second half. He had a very, very, very good second half. I'm excited to go in and see some of those things. And as we said, from a coverage perspective, I don't think somebody said when you need to move Abdul Carter back to linebacker. Abdul doesn't have the coverage instincts that you get from a guy like Tony. That was evident today, even in a game where he was a little uneven in the first half. But generally, yes. That's also a very hard run game to attack because they do a lot of the things that Penn State does with this Andy Kotelnicki offense, which, by the way, there was much less of in this game. That's that's what I wanted to talk about. There was much less of the chicanery. A lot of and I don't know if it was just because we were getting replays and we weren't seeing the full play. We'll have to see once we get like the single cam when they show up with one dude and one tripod for the Ball State game, which please, I beg of you, please show up to this show for the postgame show next week. It'll have less of a feel. I get it. We're still going to give the same effort on this side because we want to win every single week, and that doesn't change with the opponent. But we didn't see a lot of the pre-snap movement. There was not as much motion and as much shifting as I expected. And you might think, wow, there was a lot of it. There was not a lot compared to what they did at Kansas. I was expecting every single play, multiple elements moving around. And maybe it's week 1 on the road. They wanted to simplify everything. And maybe, guys, they're holding back the playbook. You know, that whole nut about whether they held the playbook back or not, that would be one thing I would say, hey, I was expecting more of that. Maybe they kept it simple for this particular game to get through this with a win. Not saying they didn't need the full playbook to beat West Virginia because they used all of the plays that they put into the game, right? But maybe they just weren't ready to do some of the fully fledged Andy Kotelnicki chaos plays. You won't see them the next 3 weeks. I promise you that. Crypto Ducat, back for another season. Always appreciate him. He says, I've been very critical of James Franklin for a number of years, but Andy Kotelnicki could be the missing piece to get him over the top. Offense could be very fun to watch. I suspect we saw less than 30 to 40% of the playbook. Right there, right? There it is. Right into that conversation. I swear, I didn't read this, my guy, Mr. or Miss, or I should stop trying to just giving people without any sort of misgendering or giving a gender to anybody who doesn't identify it. But anyway, Crypto Ducat says, I suspect we saw less than 30 to 40% of the playbook. I always push back on that idea because, yes, but that's just the nature of a game plan. Where if you have, let's say you have 300 plays in a college playbook. I'm just throwing a dart in the wind. You're not putting 300 plays into one game. You're going to pick I think I watched something Andy Kotelnicki said 100 plays, and it might even be less than that for any one game. So yeah, you might only be using 30% of the playbook, but you can't, if you put 100% of the plays into a playbook for any particular game, you would overload the circuits of any player. They have to practice all of this stuff, and they don't have an infinite number of time to practice because these guys have to go to class, and they're not professionals. And even professionals only put a slim percentage of the playbook into the offense every single week. So by definition, yes, they didn't use the full playbook, but did they use all the concepts that they could have, from that motion and shift perspective? That is something that I do think that there is some validity to. So a little bit of both on that one. A little bit, it's both, as James Franklin would say. Kevin, my guy, appreciate you donating to the channel. Apparently he just wants to remain an anonymous donor and not have a question or a thought up here. But speaking of James Franklin, I think at this point, James Franklin's press conference has got to be up on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel or pretty close. So I know the stadium Wi-Fi wasn't great, but please go to the YouTube channel. My guys, my coworkers at Blue White Illustrated have working so hard in the swampiness over in Morgantown. So check out those videos. We'll have their instant analysis, always great stuff from them, the field level perspective of everything they saw, felt, heard, smelled, and were able to discern. And then, of course, James Franklin's press conference comments and all of the stuff we've got going on there. And, of course, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. There's all kinds of great stuff that's going to come out in the next couple of days from their thoughts on the game. In fact, I'm sure that the game recap and all those things that are happening are already up at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. And put this up here one more time. I want you to know because I want us to be best friends. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, our sale, 50% off, promo code We Are, big win, promo code We Are for the Nittany Lions, getting over the hump in this game, showing off the full power of the Andy Kotelnicki offense, playing dominant defense, giving you the feel-goods that you've been following this game since probably 9 a.m., and you're still here with me at almost 7 p.m. You're putting in a full T-Frank day, enjoying your Penn State football. Go one step further. Join us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Promo code We Are for 50% off an annual membership. That's what I got. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please come back next week. We got a tailgate show live from outside Beaver Stadium with Seven Mountains Media, Landon Tangwall of the Behind the Wall podcast, and, of course, our postgame show coming up next week. We'll be talking a lot about Penn State, believe it or not, before and after the game of what they did, what they need to get better at. We'll rehash all this for the next 3 days on the BWI live show. And I hope you're there for all of that. We'll talk to you then.